Well, students, we have completed half of our course successfully and we are into the second part of our course. In this second part, we will be covering mainly the options pricing models. Before getting into the details of options, let us quickly recall what we did in the pre-midsem part and what we are going to do for the rest of the semester. Recall that we have started our course with a short introduction, and after that we have taken up the discussion on time value of money, in which we have introduced different interest rates and their computational methods, and then we have studied future value and the present value of a cash flow, and also future and present value of a cash flow stream. Then we have gone into the discussion on spot market assets. The basic investment can be categorized into two parts. One is the debt investment and other is the equity investment. Out of debt investments, we have mainly concentrated on bonds, where we have studied what is meant by yield to maturity, duration of the bond, and the term structures. Then we have taken up the equities, in which we have studied two models for stocks, basically the binomial lattice model and the log normal model. Then we have gone into the derivatives. Again, derivatives can be classified into two types. One is contingent claims and another one is non-contingent claims. We have covered non-contingent claims, in which we have detailedly studied forwards, swaps, and futures. We have also studied their pricing models and some hedging strategies. Mainly the pricing models are based on no arbitrage principle. So this is what we have covered in the first part of our course, in which quiz 1 covered the time value of money, quiz 2 covered spot market assets, and quiz 3 covered non-contingent claims. In our study, we are now left out with only contingent claims, which we will be covering in the whole of the second part of our course. So contingent claim is basically a derivative contract in which the holder has only right but not the obligation to execute the contract. The only example of contingent claim is options. In the second part of the course, we will first introduce what is meant by options, and some of the basic notions of options will be discussed, and then we will take up certain pricing models. Basically, we have two levels of pricing model. One is at the discrete time level and another one is at the continuous time level. If you recall, such things are done for stocks also. In the discrete time model, we will be covering the binomial model. It is the same as binomial lattice model for the underlying asset, combined with the pricing ideas that are coming from our forwards and futures. Okay, so this is just a combination of what we studied in stocks as well as in the non-contingent claim. These two are in a sense combined, and we have more new ideas and new strategies and so on. So once we finish this binomial model at the discrete time level, we will pass on to the continuous time model, where we will be studying Black-Scholes model. It is also derived basically from the log normal model. So in that sense, what we are going to study is already familiar to us. And finally, we will be covering certain hedging ideas like risk neutral measures and delta hedging. So this is the broad idea of what we are going to cover in the second part of our course. Recall that in non-contingent claim, both the writer and the holder have obligation to exercise the contract. It means the person who issues the contract, that is the writer, and the holder who buys the contract, both have to settle the underlying asset on the expiration date. If any one of them defaults this obligation, then it will be considered as an offense and it will be punishable. Whereas in the contingent claim, the writer has obligation. It means if the writer tries to default, then it will be considered as an offense. Whereas the holder has only right but no obligation to exercise the contract. It means the holder has only right. That is, if the holder wants to execute the contract, the writer has to go for the settlement. On the other hand, if the holder feels that he or she doesn't want to go for the settlement, they can simply tear the contract, throw it in the dustbin and walk off. It will not be considered as an offense for the holder. But for the writer, it's an obligation. So that is there for the writer, but not for the holder. Okay, if the holder is enjoying this facility, then what is he or she is going to compensate it with is that the holder has to pay a premium at the time of agreeing for the contract. That is, they will pay some token amount as a price for the contract to the writer and then takes the contract. With this, they enjoy the right but no obligation. At the expiration date, if the settlement is or the contract is not in favor of the holder will simply tear the contract, throw it off and walk out. So that is what is called the contingent claim. The only example of contingent claim is options. And throughout the rest of the course, we are only going to study options. So we can define option as a derivative in which the holder has only right but no obligation to exercise the contract. This can be taken as a definition to options. The premium is called the price of the option or option price. One has to be careful in using this word option price or price of the option, because in forwards and futures, we have used forward price and future price as the price of the underlying asset at the expiration date. But here, the word option price or price of the option plays a different meaning. It is the premium that is paid by the holder to the writer at the time of issuing the contract. Whereas the price of the underlying asset, which is agreed upon in the contract, is called the strike price. Even in forwards and futures, we also used an alternate name for it as strike price. Here it is called the strike price or the exercise price. I will come to it a little later. Let us first see what are all the types of options. Options are basically of two types. One is called the call option. A call option gives the holder of the option the right to buy. Call means it is buy the underlying asset for a strike price by a certain date. Another type of options is put option. In put option, the holder has the right to sell the underlying asset for a strike price that is agreed upon in the contract at some certain date. It can be an expiration date. So these are the two types of options. You have to clearly understand what each means. In call option, it is the right to buy. In call option, holder has right to buy, whereas in put option, the holder has right to sell the underlying asset. See, generally I remember this in the following way. When you walk in the market, you will see in front of some shops, say a textile shop, some person will be standing and calling you to come to their shop and see their dress materials, right? They will call you to come and see the dress materials. In fact, I have seen people saying, sir, you don't need to buy, you just come and see the materials, they will say, okay? So they simply call you to just enter into their shop. You know why they do that? Because once you enter and see, you may get attracted towards something and you may buy even though you have no intention to buy some clothes, right? That is why they keep on calling people by standing in front of the shop, right? So when they call you to enter into the shop, you can see that you have no obligation to buy their clothes. But if you want, yes, you can buy, right? So That is how I remember this call option as a right to buy. So the other one is the put option. The underlying assets can be stocks, commodities, foreign currencies, and even interest rates and stock indices. The settlements can be done with physical assets, or sometimes the settlement can be done in cash also. What are all the basic parameters that are involved in options? Well, you are already familiar with futures and forwards. More or less everything is same as futures and forwards. The only new idea involved in options is the premium that you pay at the time of the agreement as a buyer. Okay, that's the only difference. But still, let us list all the parameters that are involved in options. The first thing is the contract issue time. That is the time that you and your counterpart enters into the contract. So generally we take this time as t equal to 0. The next is the expiration or the maturity time. That is the time at which the contract is executed. Generally we denote this time as capital T. The next one is the strike price. That is the price at which both the parties agrees to buy or sell the asset at the expiration. Generally we denote it by S suffix capital T. The contract size, also called the lot. That is, in one contract, when you say I'm going to buy or sell an asset, how many units of assets will be bought or sold? Okay, so that is called the contract size or lot. And of course, the last but not the least is the premium that has to be paid by the holder to the writer of the contract. An option can be categorized further into two types, whether it is a call option or a put option. These are the American options and the European options. An American option is a contract that can be exercised at any time up to the expiration date. Whereas European option is something which we understand more clearly, that the contract is allowed to be exercised only on the expiration date. Just like forwards and futures. Of course, future goes with a marking to market idea. So more precisely, it's a forward. Forward is exercised only on the expiration date. Similarly, the European options are exercised only on the expiration date. Whereas in American option, the holder who has the right to execute but no obligation can decide to exercise, that is, can demand the settlement of the option at any time, any favorable time within the option period. That is from t equal to 0 to capital T. The holder can decide to go for a settlement at any t in the interval 0 to capital T. That is called the American option. There are also other types of options like Asian options and so on, which are more complicated. In our course, we will stick with American options and European options. In the National Stock Exchange and Bombay Stock Exchange, the stock indices options are traded with European option style, and stock options are traded with American option style. If you just imagine the expiration date as a boundary, then you can see that European options are fixed boundary problems, whereas the American options are moving boundary problems. That is, the holder can simply move the expiration date as per the convenience. Therefore, the boundary moves as per the choice of the holder. In the case of American options, the American and European options are just names. It doesn't mean that the American options trade only in America and European options trade only in Europe. Nothing like that. There are also European options traded in American stock exchanges, and similarly, there are also American options traded in some European stock exchanges. So these are just names that are assigned to these two styles of option. In our course, mostly we will be dealing with European options because it is more easy to handle, but sometimes we also do consider American options. The next topic of discussion is the payoff and gains. Before going into the discussion of payoffs and gain, let us introduce some notations. We generally use the notation S of t, which is also denoted by S suffix t, for the current market price of the underlying asset at some time t in the interval 0 to capital T. We use the notation K for the strike price of the option, T for the expiration time, and the closed interval 0 to T is the period of the option. Since the holder of the option has no obligation to exercise the contract at the expiration, the holder will choose to exercise the contract only if it is favorable to him or her. For instance, in call option, the holder exercises the option if and only if the strike price is less than the spot price of the underlying asset. Why? Because if you recall, in the call option, the holder has right to buy the asset at the price K, that is the strike price. Therefore, if K is less than the spot price, then the holder can buy the asset at the rate of K rupees per stock from the writer of the call option and sell it in the spot market immediately for the price S of T, because the spot market is offering S of T. And since K is less than S of T, the holder will make a profit out of this contract. Therefore, when K is less than S of T, the holder will always execute the contract. Similarly, just think of what happens in the case of put option. Yes, in the case of put option, the holder will exercise the contract if and only if the strike price K is greater than S of T, because if you recall, in put option, the holder has the right to sell the asset. So what he or she can do is go to the spot market, buy the asset at the rate of ST per share, and come immediately to the writer of the option and sell it at the rate K, because the writer has the obligation to buy it as per the contract. Therefore, the holder can sell it for this strike price K, and thereby the holder can make money out of the contract. Therefore, the holder will execute the contract if at the expiration time the strike price is greater than the spot price. This is the case when the holder is having a put option. So one has to clearly understand this. This is the most basic idea in option. This idea has to be recorded in mind very clearly. A call option is said to be in the money if K is less than S of T. Remember, if K is less than S of T, it means the holder is making money out of this call option, right? Therefore, it is said to be in the money. See, these notions are developed from the point of view of the holder, okay? Therefore, the call option is said to be in the money if K is less than ST at any time T, okay? Because this is the case where the holder will be making money, okay? And similarly, the call option is said to be at the money if K is equal to ST. It means the holder of the call option is neither making money nor losing the money, right? So that is why it is called at the money. And out of money if the strike price is greater than the spot price. Recall that if at the expiration, remember the expiration is capital T in the case of European option. In the case of American option, this expiration time T can be any time between 0 to capital T. That is why we don't put a capital T here. When we decide to stick with European option, at that time we always put S capital T. Okay, because in European option, the settlement happens only at the expiration time. Okay, so let us see, in the money means the holder is going to execute the call option. In the other two cases, the holder will simply leave the option without exercising at the expiration date, right? Now let us see what is the payoff of a call option for the holder. See, we are talking about the holder's point of view. A similar idea can be developed from the writer's point of view also. I will leave it to you to develop that, but let us only discuss from the holder's point of view. Let us look at this problem in a coordinate where x-axis is the spot price of the underlying asset at the expiration. See, this suffix, whether it is capital T or small t, is not important. Okay, it's at expiration. That is more important at this level. In a more deeper theory, it matters, like whether you are talking about European option or American option matters in a more involved theories, but at this introduction level, it doesn't really matter. And this is the difference between the strike price and the stock price in the spot market, which is called the payoff. This is the payoff for the holder's point of view. So let's say this is the value of K that the holder has fixed in his or her contract. Then if it is a call option for the holder, then the holder will not execute the option if S is less than K. If the stock price at the expiration is something sitting here, okay, that is your stock price at the spot market, say S of T, is taking a value somewhere here, then the holder will not execute the option, right? Whereas in this case, that is if the call option is in the money at the time of expiration, then the holder will execute. And what is the payoff? Payoff is nothing but the difference between the spot price and the strike price. So it goes like this, right? So how will you define the payoff? Well, the payoff is defined as, let's use the notation CP, that is the call payoff at the expiration. Well, since it is put capital T, it may be the European option, otherwise it will be just a small t. That will be given as maximum of 0, spot price minus the strike price. Okay, it means if this term is positive, it means what? It means ST is greater than K, that is we have already seen, then the holder is going to execute the option and get the payoff, which is nothing but the difference between these two. Otherwise, the holder is simply going to throw it away and walk off. Therefore, in that case, his payoff is nothing. Okay. So the payoff graph is therefore given like this. For the case of call option, from the holder's point of view, in this case, the call option is referred as long call. Similarly, if I say short call, it is the same call option, but viewed from the writer's point of view. See, the writer's point of view, everything will be just the reverse of what we are seeing in the case of the holder. Okay, in the case of writer, the payoff will be again 0 up to K, and then if the spot price is greater than the strike price, then the writer is actually losing the money. Therefore, this is short call payoff and this is the long call payoff. It means what? Long call means the option is the same. It's a call option. When we say long call, it means we are viewing it from the holder's point of view. Whereas when we say short call, it means we are viewing the option from the writer's point of view. That's all is the difference. Similarly, in the case of put option, we say that the option is in money if the strike price is greater than the spot price at the time T. So in this case, the holder will execute the option at the expiration. Whereas in the other two cases, the holder will not execute the option at the expiration, right? How will you visualize the payoff here? Well, first let us see how the payoff is defined. The payoff of the put option at the expiration is defined like this. You can see that if the spot price is greater than the strike price, then the holder will not execute the option, and therefore the holder's payoff in this case is just zero. Whereas if the spot price is less than the strike price, then the holder will execute the option and thereby get the payoff given by this expression, right? So this is from the holder's point of view, and therefore this is the long put. You can similarly view the payoff from the writer's point of view, in which case it is called the short put, and the payoff is again when spot price is greater than the strike price, then the writer will not have any payoff because the holder will not execute the option. Whereas if the spot price is less than the strike price, unlike the holder, the writer will lose the money. This is the short put payoff. You can see that the only interest for a person to write an option, whether it is a call option or a put option, is just the premium, that's all. The value of an option can be defined in the similar way as payoff. Recall that the payoffs are defined at the time of expiration, whether it is at capital T in the case of European option, or any T in the interval 0 to capital T in the case of American option. The same idea can be adopted for a time small t, which is not necessarily a expiration time. That is, it's not a time at which the holder goes for the exercise of the option. So in that case, the C of t and P of t are called the values of the call option and the put option respectively, and their definitions are the same as what we have defined as payoffs. Next, let us define what is called the gain or loss in a option. Recall, in the payoff, we have never brought the premium into the picture. It is purely the difference between the strike price and the spot price. But premium is also involved in the option, and therefore we have to also account the premium paid by the holder in the option. So when you incorporate the premium paid by the holder into the payoff, what we get is the gain or loss in the option. Let X be the premium paid by the holder, and R is the prevailing interest rate continuously compounded. Then the gain or loss, depending on the sign of this expression, is given by C of t, which is the payoff, minus the premium paid amplified by the interest rate continuously compounded amplification factor. And this is for the long call, that is the call option from the holder's point of view. And similarly, the short call, that is the call option from the writer's point of view, also we can define the gain or loss, and the expression is just the negative of the long call, and it is given by this expression. Similarly, we can define the gain or loss for the put option, whether it is a long put or short put, we can define. And similarly, if the interest rate is implemented discrete compound wise with a frequency say m, then also we can define the gain or loss for calls and puts in a similar way, where this amplification factor has to be properly defined as per the discrete compounding information. I'll leave it to you to write the expression for gain or loss in all these cases, and also I leave it to you to understand how to draw the graph of the gain or loss in a similar way as we drew the graph of payoff.